Sarah had been staring at inventory spreadsheets for 3 hours when the first explosion shook the outpost walls. Coffee splashed across her keyboard as emergency alarms began their piercing wail throughout forward operating base. She pushed back from her desk, heart hammering as red emergency lights bathed her cramped supply office in crimson shadows. "All personnel to emergency stations," crackled the intercom. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Sarah grabbed her communications headset and patched into the command frequency. Static filled her ears before Captain's voice broke through, tight with controlled panic. "Multiple hostile contacts approaching from the northern ridge. Rangers are moving to intercept. Supply, we need immediate ammunition resupply to grid reference 77 Alpha." Sarah's fingers flew across her terminal, pulling up ammunition stores and transport protocols. After 18 months as supply coordinator for the human expedition on 442B, she knew every crate, every serial number, every delivery route by heart. The Rangers trusted her to keep them equipped and fed in this hostile alien wilderness, and she had never let them down. "Captain, ammunition pallets ready for drone delivery in 4 minutes, she reported, already flagging priority items in the system. "Standard combat load plus extra magazines for the M4 variants." "Negative on drone delivery," replied, his voice strained. "Hostiles have some kind of electronic warfare capability. Drones are going down left and right. We need ground transport." Sarah's blood ran cold. Ground transport meant driving through potentially hostile territory in an unarmored supply truck. It meant leaving the relative safety of the base perimeter and venturing into the alien forest where anything could be waiting. She had signed up to manage inventory and coordinate logistics, not to become a combat delivery driver. But Rangers were depending on ammunition that only she could deliver. "Copy that, Captain. Ground transport deploying in 6 minutes." Sarah grabbed her gear vest from the wall hook, checking that her emergency beacon and first aid kit were secured. She had trained with the standard-issue sidearm that all expedition personnel carried, but using it had always seemed like a distant possibility. Now she strapped the weapon to her thigh with trembling fingers, hoping she would never need to draw it. The motor pool was chaos when she arrived. Mechanics scrambled to prep vehicles while security personnel loaded additional ammunition into the back of the heavy transport truck. Sergeant, the motor pool chief, looked up from checking tire pressure with sweat beading on his forehead. "You sure about this run? Reports are coming in of multiple hostile groups moving through the forest. This could get ugly fast." Sarah nodded, though her mouth felt dry as sand. "Rangers need ammunition, Sergeant. I'm not letting them fight with empty magazines because I was scared to drive a truck." Handed her the vehicle keys and a headset tuned to the tactical frequency. "Trucks loaded with everything on the priority list, plus extra medical supplies and water. GPS route is programmed to avoid known hostile positions, but that intel is 20 minutes old. Things change fast out there." The truck engine rumbled to life, a deep growl that vibrated through the steering wheel into Sarah's hands. She had driven supply runs dozens of times during her deployment, but never under enemy contact. The base gates opened with a mechanical groan, revealing the dense alien forest that stretched toward the northern ridge where the Rangers were engaged. 442B's forest was unlike anything on Earth. The trees grew in twisted spirals, their bark shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like slow heartbeats. Thick vines draped between the trunks, creating natural canopies that blocked most sunlight and cast the forest floor in perpetual twilight. It was beautiful and alien and terrifying all at once. Sarah pressed the accelerator and rolled through the gates, following the dirt road that expedition engineers had carved through the wilderness over the past year. Her headset crackled with radio traffic as Rangers reported contact with hostile forces. She tried to focus on driving, but fragments of combat communication sent ice through her veins. "Taking fire from elevated positions, multiple casualties. Need immediate medical evacuation. Bravo squad is pinned down behind that blue crystal formation. Can't advance without suppressive fire. Where's that ammunition resupply? We're down to our last magazines." Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing the truck as fast as she dared along the winding forest road. Branches scraped against the vehicle's armored sides with sounds like fingernails on metal. Every shadow between the trees could hide an enemy position. Every rustle of alien vegetation could signal an ambush. 5 kilometers from the base, her worst fears materialized. The first shot sparked off the truck's front bumper, sending a shower of metal fragments across the windshield. Sarah yanked the steering wheel hard left, tires screaming as the vehicle skidded toward the tree line. More shots followed, muzzle flashes winking from the forest on both sides of the road. "Supply transport under fire," she called into her headset, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Multiple hostiles engaging from concealed positions." The truck's armor held against the initial barrage, but Sarah could hear rounds pinging off the vehicle's sides with increasing frequency. She needed to get out of the kill zone, but the road ahead curved through a narrow valley where the hostile forces had clear fields of fire. That's when training took over. Every expedition member had completed combat preparedness courses before deployment. Sarah had qualified as an expert marksman with both rifle and pistol, though she had never expected to use those skills outside of training exercises. Now, as hostile fire intensified around her position, muscle memory guided her actions. She slammed the brakes and yanked the truck off the road, using its bulk as cover while she assessed the tactical situation. Through her side mirror, she could see movement in the trees, humanoid figures in camouflaged gear, advancing with coordinated fire and movement tactics that spoke of military training. These weren't the primitive alien raiders that the expedition had occasionally encountered. These were professional soldiers. Sarah keyed her radio. "Command, this is Supply 1. I'm under attack by organized military forces approximately 4 kilometers north of base. Estimate squad-sized element with small arms, requesting immediate support." Captain's voice came back tense and strained. "Supply 1, all Ranger units are heavily engaged. No assets available for immediate support. Can you continue mission?" Sarah looked at the ammunition crates stacked in the truck bed, then at the hostile muzzle flashes flickering through the forest around her position. Rangers were counting on this resupply to stay alive in their own firefight. If she turned back now, good soldiers would die because their weapons ran dry. "Copy, command. Continuing mission." She grabbed her sidearm and extra magazines from her gear vest. The truck's passenger door faced away from the heaviest enemy fire, giving her a few precious seconds to deploy without being immediately targeted. Sarah took 3 deep breaths, visualizing the training scenarios she had practiced dozens of times on the firing range. The door opened, and she rolled out, keeping the truck's bulk between herself and the enemy positions. Dirt and loose gravel dug into her elbows as she low-crawled to the vehicle's rear bumper, where she could observe the hostile forces while remaining in cover. 6 targets, all carrying advanced energy weapons that glowed with blue-white charge indicators. They moved with practiced coordination, bounding forward in teams while others provided covering fire. Professional soldiers, definitely not local raiders. Sarah steadied her pistol against the truck's bumper and acquired her first target, a figure advancing across a small clearing 30 meters to her left. The weapon felt familiar in her hands despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Breathe in, breathe out halfway, hold, squeeze the trigger straight back. The shot took the hostile center mass, dropping him instantly. His companions immediately shifted their fire toward Sarah's position, forcing her to duck as energy bolts sizzled overhead and scorched the truck's armor plating. She waited for a lull in incoming fire, then shifted to a new firing position along the vehicle's right side. A second target was visible through the undergrowth, partially concealed behind one of the twisted alien trees. Sarah aimed carefully, accounting for the partial cover, and fired twice. Both rounds found their mark. The hostile spun and fell, his weapon clattering against exposed tree roots. "2 down," she whispered into her headset, though she knew the Rangers were too busy fighting their own battle to acknowledge. The remaining 4 hostiles had identified her position and were concentrating their fire on the supply truck. Energy bolts struck the vehicle's armor with sharp crackling sounds, each impact leaving glowing scorch marks on the metal surface. Sarah realized that she couldn't remain stationary much longer. The enemy would either flank her position or their concentrated fire would eventually penetrate the truck's protection. She needed to move. The forest around the road offered multiple concealment positions, but reaching them would require crossing open ground under enemy fire. Sarah studied the terrain, identifying a fallen log approximately 20 meters from her current position that would provide better cover and a different angle of attack. When the enemy fire slackened momentarily, she sprinted from behind the truck toward the log, zigzagging to present a difficult target. Energy bolts cracked past her head, close enough that she could feel the heat against her cheek, but none found their mark. She dove behind the fallen log just as a barrage of shots struck the ground where she had been running. Bark splinters showered around her as she caught her breath and reassessed the tactical situation. From this new position, she could see a third hostile attempting to flank around the truck's left side. He moved cautiously, weapon raised, clearly expecting to catch her still hiding behind the vehicle. Sarah tracked his movement through her pistol sights, leading the target as he stepped between two trees. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon flying into the underbrush. He tried to scramble for cover, but Sarah's follow-up shot ensured he wouldn't be rejoining the fight. 3 downs, 3 remaining. But the survivors were adapting to her tactics. They had spread out further, making it harder for her to engage multiple targets quickly. Worse, one of them was working his way around to her right flank while the others kept her pinned down with suppressive fire. Sarah realized that remaining defensive would eventually get her killed. She needed to take the initiative. She pulled a smoke grenade from her gear vest, standard equipment for all expedition personnel in case of emergency extraction, and hurled it toward the center of the enemy positions. Thick gray smoke began billowing through the trees, reducing visibility and forcing the hostiles to reposition. Using the smoke as concealment, Sarah moved again, this time toward higher ground where a cluster of blue crystal formations would give her both cover and elevated firing positions. The crystals were a common geological feature on 442b, jutting from the earth in geometric patterns that seemed too regular to be entirely natural. She reached the crystal formation just as the flanking hostile appeared through the smoke, looking for her previous position behind the log. Sarah had a clear shot from above and behind his location. She took careful aim and fired once. 4 down, 2 to go. The remaining hostiles were now caught between her elevated position and the supply truck, with limited cover options. They tried to bound backward toward deeper forest, but Sarah had anticipated their withdrawal route. Her 5th shot caught one of them as he crossed a small gap between trees. The last hostile realized his situation was hopeless and attempted to surrender, dropping his weapon and raising his hands. But Sarah had seen what these professional soldiers were capable of, and she couldn't risk them regrouping or calling for reinforcements that might threaten the Rangers or the base. Her 6th shot ended the engagement. Silence settled over the forest, broken only by the distant sounds of the ongoing Ranger firefight and the gentle hum of alien insects in the trees overhead. Sarah remained in position for several minutes, watching for additional threats, before cautiously descending from the crystal formation. She checked each hostile position to ensure they were neutralized, then returned to the supply truck. The vehicle had taken significant damage from enemy fire. Scorch marks covered the armor plating, and 2 tires had been punctured, but the engine still ran, and the cargo remained intact. Sarah climbed back into the driver's seat and keyed her radio. "Command, this is Supply 1. Hostile forces neutralized, continuing to delivery point." Captain's voice came back immediately. "Supply 1, did you say hostile forces neutralized? How many personnel did you have with you?" "Just me, Command. 6 hostiles engaged and eliminated. ETA to Ranger position is 8 minutes. There was a long pause before responded. "Copy, Supply 1. Rangers are marking their position with blue smoke. Be advised, we have multiple wounded requiring immediate medical evacuation." Sarah pressed the accelerator and continued along the forest road, adrenaline gradually fatting as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She had killed 6 professional soldiers in single combat while protecting a supply convoy. 6 perfect shots under extreme stress, exactly the kind of human performance that their alien adversaries consistently underestimated. The Ranger's position came into view as she rounded a bend in the road, a cluster of defensive positions built around natural crystal formations, with blue smoke drifting above their location. Sarah could see several figures waving her toward their perimeter, desperate for the ammunition and medical supplies her truck carried. She parked the vehicle in the center of their defensive position and immediately began unloading critical supplies. Rangers rushed forward to help, their faces grim with exhaustion and relief. Many showed signs of prolonged combat, torn uniforms, bandaged wounds, the hollow-eyed look of soldiers who had been fighting for their lives. Sergeant Williams, the Ranger platoon leader, approached as Sarah handed off the last ammunition crate. His left arm was wrapped in bloody field dressings, but he moved with the focused energy of a professional soldier still in combat mode. "I heard you had some trouble on the way here. You okay?" Sarah nodded, though her hands were beginning to shake now that the immediate crisis had passed. 6 hostiles set up an ambush on the supply route. I managed to neutralize them, but we need to be careful about future convoy runs. These weren't raiders. They were military professionals with advanced equipment. Williams studied her with new respect. 6 hostiles by yourself. 6 shots, 6 kills, Sarah confirmed. They underestimated what humans are capable of when pushed into a corner. Around them, Rangers were already distributing the fresh ammunition and treating their wounded with the medical supplies Sarah had delivered. The convoy had arrived exactly when needed, potentially saving multiple lives by ensuring the Rangers could continue fighting rather than being overrun when their ammunition ran low. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. Professional military forces didn't operate in isolation, and the ambush suggested a much larger threat than the expedition had previously faced. Whoever was behind the attack clearly understood human capabilities well enough to position an ambush team, but they had still underestimated what a single determined human could accomplish under pressure. As she helped Rangers load their wounded into the truck for medical evacuation, Sarah realized that her role in the expedition was about to change dramatically. She had proven herself in combat, demonstrated the kind of cool precision under fire that marked elite soldiers. Command would want to understand how their supply coordinator had single-handedly eliminated a squad of professional enemy combatants. The return trip to base passed without incident, though Sarah remained alert for additional threats. The wounded Rangers were stable but needed immediate surgery, and the intelligence value of the enemy equipment she had captured would be significant for future operations. Back at Forward Operating Base, word of Sarah's combat actions spread quickly through the expedition personnel. 6 enemy soldiers eliminated by the supply coordinator, who most people knew only as the person who ensured their meals arrived on time, and their equipment requests were processed efficiently. Colonel Hammond, the expedition commander, was waiting when Sarah returned to her office to file her after-action report. He was a career military officer with 30 years of experience, and he studied Sarah with the calculating gaze of someone reassessing previous assumptions. "I've been reviewing your personnel file," Hammond said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Expert marksman qualification, advanced combat training, tactical leadership course completion. Why exactly were you assigned to supply coordination instead of a combat role?" Sarah saved her work and turned to face the colonel directly. "I requested supply coordination, sir. I wanted to contribute to the mission success without the constant stress of combat operations. I thought managing logistics would be more sustainable for a long-term deployment." Hammond nodded slowly, "And now?" Sarah considered the question carefully. The combat engagement had been terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She had discovered capabilities within herself that she hadn't known existed, a kind of cold precision under extreme pressure that felt both foreign and completely natural. "Now I think the mission requirements may have changed, sir. Professional military forces operating on 442B represent a threat we weren't prepared for. We need personnel who can adapt to whatever challenges this planet presents." "My thoughts exactly," Hammond agreed. "I'm recommending you for immediate promotion to Combat Operations Specialist. We need someone who understands both our logistical capabilities and our tactical requirements. Someone who can think outside traditional military frameworks when the situation demands it." As Colonel Hammond left her office, Sarah looked around at the familiar surroundings: inventory spreadsheets, supply requisition forms, equipment catalogs. For 18 months, this had been her world. A safe, predictable environment where the biggest challenge was ensuring adequate toilet paper supplies for the entire base. But today had changed everything. She had faced professional enemy soldiers and emerged victorious through superior marksmanship and tactical thinking. She had proven that humans could excel in any environment when properly motivated, even when facing opponents who should theoretically have every advantage. The supply coordinator who had started the day worrying about spreadsheet errors was gone. In her place was someone who understood that survival on an alien world required constant adaptation. And the 3 weeks after the ambush that changed everything, Sarah found herself in the expedition's intelligence briefing room, studying tactical displays that showed disturbing patterns across 442B. Red markers indicated confirmed hostile activity, yellow showed possible enemy positions, and blue represented human settlements and outposts. The map looked like a disease spreading across the continent. The professional military forces you encountered weren't an isolated unit, explained Lieutenant Commander Torres, the expedition's intelligence officer. We've confirmed at least 12 similar engagements across 6 different sectors. Each time, our people faced organized, well-equipped opponents using advanced tactics. Colonel Hammond gestured toward a 3-dimensional holographic display showing the northern forest where Sarah's convoy had been attacked. Analysis of the equipment you recovered reveals technology significantly more advanced than anything we've seen from local populations. Energy weapons, sophisticated communications gear, body armor that can deflect standard rifle rounds. Sarah studied the tactical display, her new role as combat operations specialist giving her access to intelligence that supply coordinators never saw. The scope of the threat was far beyond what anyone had imagined when the expedition launched from Earth 18 months earlier. Sir, do we have any indication of who's backing these forces? The coordination suggests a unified command structure, not random mercenary groups. Torres highlighted several data points on the holographic map. Unknown at this time, but the pattern suggests they're testing our responses, probing for weaknesses. Each engagement has pushed a little further, lasted a little longer. They're gathering intelligence on human capabilities. Which means they're planning something bigger, Sarah concluded. The tactical implications were clear to anyone with military training. Professional forces didn't conduct extended reconnaissance operations unless they were preparing for a major offensive action. Hammond nodded grimly. Exactly, which is why I'm assigning you to lead a special operations team. Your performance during the convoy ambush demonstrated exactly the kind of adaptability we need to face an unconventional threat. Sarah felt a familiar flutter of nervous energy, the same sensation she had experienced before leaving the base gates 3 weeks earlier. But now it was tempered with confidence born from proven capability under fire. She had faced professional enemies and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, she was ready. What's the mission, Colonel? Deep reconnaissance. We need to identify the source of these professional military forces and determine their ultimate objectives. Intelligence suggests there's a central command facility somewhere in the Meridian Mountains, approximately 200 kilometers northeast of our position. Torres activated a new display showing satellite imagery of mountainous terrain covered in dense alien vegetation. Towering peaks disappeared into perpetual cloud cover, while deep valleys remained shrouded in mist that reconnaissance drones couldn't penetrate effectively. The Meridian Mountains have been off-limits since the expedition's arrival due to extreme weather conditions and dangerous wildlife. But recent signals intelligence suggests significant artificial structures hidden somewhere in that region. Structures large enough to support a major military operation. Sarah studied the terrain with growing appreciation for the mission's complexity. The mountains represented some of the most hostile geography on 442B. Unpredictable weather patterns, limited visibility, and native predators that had already claimed several expedition members who ventured too far from established safe zones. Team composition. 4 specialists handpicked for this mission, Hammond replied. Yourself as team leader and primary marksman, Corporal Martinez from our engineering section. He's proven himself exceptional at improvising solutions with alien technology. Sergeant from the Medical Corps, trained in xenobiology and field surgery. And Private Jackson, our best reconnaissance specialist. When do we deploy? Tomorrow at 600 hours. Weather forecasts suggest a brief window of stable atmospheric conditions that might allow you to reach the mountains before the next storm system arrives. After that, you'll be operating in whatever conditions the planet provides. Sarah spent the evening reviewing mission files and equipment manifests, but her mind kept drifting to the tactical challenges ahead. Leading a team was fundamentally different from the solo combat she had experienced during the convoy ambush. She would be responsible not just for mission success, but for bringing 4 people safely home from one of the most dangerous regions on an already hostile planet. At 500 hours, she met her team in the equipment bay where their gear had been laid out and triple-checked by the supply staff. Corporal Martinez was a wiry engineer with steady hands and the kind of creative problem-solving skills that kept complex machinery functioning in impossible conditions. Sergeant carried herself with the calm professionalism of someone who had seen combat medical emergencies and learned to function under pressure. Private Jackson moved with the careful awareness of a natural scout, already studying maps and satellite imagery. "Listen up," Sarah began, addressing her team as they conducted final equipment checks. "This mission takes us into completely unknown territory. No backup, no easy extraction, no guarantee that our communications will reach base once we're in the mountains. We succeed by staying alert, staying flexible, and taking care of each other." Martinez looked up from inspecting his toolkit. "Ma'am, what's our rules of engagement if we encounter hostile forces?" "We avoid contact if possible," Sarah replied. "But if engagement is unavoidable, we fight to win and we all come home. I've seen what these professional military forces are capable of. They're well-trained and well-equipped, but they're not superhuman. Careful planning and superior execution will see us through." Secured her medical pack and checked her sidearm one final time. "Ma'am, if we find this command facility, what's our primary objective? Reconnaissance only, or do we take action?" Sarah had wrestled with that question during her mission briefing with Colonel Hammond. The expedition was essentially a civilian scientific operation with minimal military support, not an invasion force equipped for major combat operations. But the evidence suggested that whatever was hidden in the Meridian Mountains represented a direct threat to every human on 442B. Primary objective is intelligence gathering. We identify the threat, assess capabilities, and report back to base with actionable intelligence. But if we discover an imminent threat to expedition personnel, we're authorized to take whatever action necessary to protect human lives. Jackson studied the terrain maps one more time before rolling them up and securing them in his pack. "Ma'am, what about extraction? If things go wrong up there, how do we get home?" It was a fair question, and Sarah appreciated that Jackson was thinking through contingencies. The Meridian Mountains were beyond the range of most expedition aircraft, and ground vehicles couldn't navigate the steep terrain and dense vegetation. Emergency extraction will be attempted if we miss our scheduled check-in times. But realistically, if something goes seriously wrong, we'll need to handle it ourselves until we can reach a location suitable for aircraft pickup. The team completed their gear checks and moved to the motor pool where a modified all-terrain vehicle waited. The ATV had been equipped with additional armor plating, extended fuel tanks, and specialized climbing gear for mountain operations. It would carry them as far as the terrain allowed, after which they would continue on foot. Sarah took the driver's position while Jackson rode shotgun with navigation equipment and communications gear. Martinez occupied the rear seats, surrounded by carefully packed supplies and specialized equipment for their respective roles. The base gates opened onto the pre-dawn darkness, revealing the alien forest bathed in the eerie glow of bioluminescent vegetation. 442B's shorter day-night cycle meant they would experience 3 periods of darkness during their journey to the mountains, each bringing different challenges and opportunities for concealment. For the first 50 kilometers, they followed established expedition routes through terrain that had been mapped and secured over the past 18 months. Sarah pushed the ATV hard, knowing that speed through familiar territory would be crucial for reaching the mountains before hostile forces could detect and intercept their movement. As they left the mapped zone behind, the landscape began changing dramatically. The twisted trees of the lowland forest gave way to different alien species, towering plants with crystalline bark that chimed softly in the wind, sprawling fungi that glowed with internal phosphorescence, and thick vines that moved with their own mysterious purpose. "Motion ahead," Jackson reported, studying his scanner display. "Large biological signatures approximately 2 kilometers northeast of our position." Sarah slowed the vehicle and activated its stealth systems, reducing engine noise and heat signature to minimal levels. Whatever lived in these unexplored regions, the expedition had learned to approach unknown life forms with extreme caution. Through her binoculars, Sarah spotted the source of the scanner readings, a herd of creatures unlike anything in the expedition's xenobiology database. They stood 3 meters tall on 6 legs, with armored hides that shifted color to match their surroundings. Each creature carried itself with predatory grace despite their herbivorous behavior, suggesting that evolution had favored large, dangerous-looking animals on this world. "Native wildlife," Sarah whispered into her headset. "Maintain silent protocols until we're clear of their territory." The herd paid no attention to the slowly moving ATV, apparently categorizing it as just another part of the landscape. But Sarah noticed that several individuals maintained alert postures, heads raised and scanning for threats even while the others fed on crystalline plant formations. After an hour of careful movement through increasingly dense vegetation, they reached the foothills of the Meridian Mountains. The terrain became too steep and rocky for the ATV to continue, forcing them to abandon the vehicle in a concealed position and continue on foot. "From here we climb," Sarah announced, shouldering her pack and checking her equipment one final time. "Jackson takes point, I'll follow, then Martinez, and 20-meter intervals, silent movement protocols, and watch for anything that doesn't belong in a natural mountain environment." The initial climb was manageable, following animal trails and natural ledges through dense vegetation that provided excellent concealment. But as they gained elevation, the terrain became more challenging and the air grew thinner, forcing them to take regular rest breaks despite the need for speed. After 4 hours of steady climbing, Jackson raised his fist to signal a halt. Sarah moved forward to his position, where he was studying something through his binoculars with obvious concern. "Ma'am, we've got artificial structures ahead, definitely not natural formations." Sarah took the binoculars and focused on the area Jackson indicated. Through gaps in the vegetation, she could see geometric shapes that stood out starkly against the organic chaos of the alien forest. Metal frameworks, regular angles, and surfaces that reflected light in ways that no natural mineral would. "Perimeter sensors," she identified. "Professional-grade military specification. We've found the edge of their operation." Moved up to join them, studying the structures with the analytical eye of someone trained in both medical and technical fields. "Those sensor arrays are more advanced than anything the expedition brought from Earth. Whoever built them has access to technology we don't fully understand." Martinez pointed toward a partially concealed installation further up the mountainside. "Ma'am, look at the power distribution system. Those cables are carrying enormous electrical loads, enough to support a major facility." Sarah studied the tactical situation. They had definitely found the source of the professional military forces that had been harassing expedition outposts. But penetrating the perimeter without detection would require careful planning and perfect execution. "We circle around to the north face of the mountain," she decided. "Sensor coverage is always lighter on the most inaccessible approaches. Jackson, what's your assessment of the terrain?" Jackson pulled out his topographical map and compared it with the actual terrain visible through their position. "North face is almost vertical, but there are ledge systems we could use for climbing. It'll be dangerous, especially if the weather turns bad, but it's probably our best chance for undetected infiltration." "How long?" 6 hours minimum, assuming good conditions. Could be much longer if we hit technical climbing sections or have to wait out weather." Sarah checked her watch. They had been moving for 6 hours already, and the mission timeline called for them to be in position for observation by nightfall. The schedule was tight, but manageable if everything went according to plan. "We move, you're our anchor climber. If someone falls, we're counting on you to arrest the fall and get them back on the route. Martinez, you handle any technical equipment we encounter. Jackson maintains point security and navigation. I've got overall tactical coordination." The climb around the north face of the mountain pushed everyone to their physical limits. The rock was alien mineral formations that didn't always behave like terrestrial stone, sometimes crumbling unexpectedly or proving harder than diamond depending on its composition. Added to the challenge were patches of aggressive plant life that seemed to actively resist their passage. But gradually, they worked their way around to a position overlooking the main facility. What Sarah saw through her binoculars exceeded her worst fears about the scope of the threat facing the expedition. The hidden installation sprawled across an entire valley, with multiple levels carved directly into the mountainside. Sophisticated communications arrays reached toward the sky, while landing pads accommodated aircraft larger and more advanced than anything humanity had brought to 442B. Hundreds of uniformed personnel moved through the facility with military precision. "Jesus," Martinez whispered, "that's not a forward operating base, that's a full military headquarters." Activated her recording equipment, documenting everything they could observe from their concealed position. Personnel count suggests at least a battalion-sized force, maybe larger if they have additional facilities we can't see from this angle. Jackson studied the aircraft on the landing pads with growing concern. "Ma'am, those aren't any design in our database. The technology level is significantly beyond what Earth developed for this expedition." Sarah felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. The professional military forces, the advanced technology, the scale of the installation. This wasn't a native operation. Someone with access to technology superior to Earth's had established a major military presence on 442B, and they were systematically probing human defenses in preparation for something much bigger. "We need closer observation," she decided. "Whatever's happening down there, it threatens every human on this planet. Jackson, can you identify an infiltration route?" Jackson studied the facility through his binoculars, mapping guard positions and movement patterns with professional thoroughness. "There's a maintenance access on the east side of the main building. Minimal security coverage, probably because they assume the perimeter sensors would detect any intrusion attempt." "How long do we have?" "Guard rotation every 2 hours. Next change is in 90 minutes. If we move during the transition, we might have a 15-minute window to get inside and plant surveillance equipment." Sarah weighed the risks. Infiltrating the facility would provide crucial intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. But if they were detected, 4 people could never fight their way out against a battalion of professional soldiers with superior technology. The mission called for reconnaissance only, but sometimes circumstances demanded that soldiers exceed their orders to protect the people counting on them. "We go in," Sarah decided. "Martinez, you plant the surveillance devices. You document everything you can about their technology and personnel. Jackson maintains overwatch and extraction security. I'll handle close protection and coordination." As they prepared for infiltration, Sarah realized that this mission would define humanity's future on 442B. If they succeeded in gathering actionable intelligence, the expedition might survive whatever was coming. If they failed, every human settlement on the planet could be destroyed before anyone knew the maintenance access tunnel was darker than anything Sarah had ever experienced. Not just an absence of light, but a suffocating blackness that seemed to absorb their infrared equipment and muffle even the smallest sounds. She led her team through the narrow passage with one hand trailing along the alien metal walls, feeling for obstacles or changes in direction. "Motion sensors ahead," Jackson whispered through their tactical communications system, his voice barely audible even through their encrypted channel. 3 units overlapping coverage, military grade." Martinez moved forward, his engineering toolkit already in hand. In the 18 months since the expedition's arrival on 442B, he had become the acknowledged expert on alien technology integration. If anyone could neutralize sophisticated security systems without triggering alarms, it was Corporal Martinez. "Give me 2 minutes," he whispered, connecting bypass cables to access panels that glowed with symbols no human had ever seen before. "These systems are definitely not from Earth, but the logic patterns are similar enough that I can work with them." Sarah checked her chronometer. They had been inside the enemy facility for 8 minutes, with perhaps 7 more before the guard rotation would increase their chances of detection exponentially. Every second counted, but rushing would only increase the likelihood of making a fatal mistake. Positioned herself at the tunnel entrance, monitoring for approaching personnel while documenting everything she observed about the facility's construction and technology. Her medical training had given her an eye for biological and technical details that others might miss, and her preliminary observations were already providing crucial intelligence. "Ma'am," whispered, "the architectural patterns suggest this facility has been here for years, possibly decades. This isn't a recent installation. It's an established military presence that predates our arrival on the planet." The implications were staggering. If an advanced military force had been operating on 442B long before humanity's arrival, The entire expedition was based on fundamentally flawed assumptions about the planet's strategic situation. They weren't exploring an uninhabited world. They were essentially trespassers in someone else's territory. "Got it," Martinez announced softly. "Motion sensors are bypassed, but I'm seeing power signatures that suggest much more sophisticated security systems deeper in the facility. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast." Sarah made the tactical decision that would define everything that followed. Protocol called for intelligence gathering only, but the evidence suggested an imminent threat that required immediate action. If this facility had been planning operations against human settlements for months or years, waiting for official authorization might mean watching thousands of expedition personnel die in coordinated attacks. "New mission priorities," she whispered into her communicator. "We plant the surveillance devices as planned, but we also look for any intelligence about immediate threat timelines. If we can identify specific targets or operational schedules, we might be able to prevent attacks that are already in motion." The team moved deeper into the facility, following maintenance passages that provided access to the main operational areas without exposing them to normal personnel traffic. Through ventilation grills, they could observe command centers, planning rooms, and equipment bays filled with technology that seemed decades ahead of Earth's capabilities. In the primary command center, Sarah watched uniformed figures manipulating holographic displays that showed detailed maps of every human settlement on 442B. Red markers indicated planned attack vectors, while tactical overlays suggested coordinated strikes designed to eliminate expedition leadership and destroy critical infrastructure simultaneously. "Jesus Christ," Jackson breathed, documenting everything with his recording equipment. "They're planning to hit every major settlement within the next 72 hours. This isn't harassment, it's an extermination operation." Had positioned herself to observe the personnel in the command center, using her medical training to assess the alien soldiers planning humanity's destruction. "Ma'am, these aren't just advanced human forces. I'm seeing physiological characteristics that don't match terrestrial biology. Enhanced musculature, modified skeletal structures, neural interface ports that suggest technological augmentation." Sarah felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The professional military forces weren't just advanced. They were alien, or at least heavily modified beings with technology far beyond anything humanity had developed. The expedition had stumbled into the territory of a species that considered human presence an invasion requiring complete elimination. "Martinez, can you access their communication systems?" "Working on it," he replied, connecting interfaces to alien control panels with practiced efficiency. "These systems use quantum encryption protocols, but the underlying architecture is logical enough that I might be able to establish a connection." As Martinez worked, Sarah studied the tactical displays in the command center with growing urgency. The attack plans were incredibly detailed, showing assault routes, target priorities, and resource allocation that spoke of months of careful planning. Whoever had designed this operation understood human capabilities and limitations with deadly accuracy. "I'm in their communications network," Martinez whispered excitedly. "Ma'am, you need to see this. They're not just planning attacks on our settlements, they're coordinating with other installations across multiple star systems. This is part of a larger operation against human colonial expansion." The scope of the threat exceeded anything Sarah had imagined. This wasn't just about 442B, it was about humanity's ability to survive as a spacefaring species. If hostile forces were positioned to eliminate human colonies across multiple star systems, Earth itself might be under threat. "Can you transmit a warning to our base?" "Negative. Their communications jamming is too sophisticated, and attempting a transmission would definitely trigger their security systems. But I can download their entire operational database if I have about 10 more minutes." Sarah checked her chronometer again. They had been inside the facility for 14 minutes, with the guard rotation approaching rapidly. 10 more minutes would put them deep into the danger zone, where detection became almost inevitable. But the intelligence Martinez could retrieve might be the only thing standing between humanity and complete extermination. "Do it, Jackson, maintain security watch. We're staying until we have everything." As Martinez worked to penetrate deeper into the alien database, Sarah positioned herself to observe the command center's main operational briefing. Through the ventilation system, she could hear alien commanders discussing final preparations for what they called the pacification protocol, the systematic elimination of human presence on 442B. Primary targets include the main expedition base, all outlying research stations, and the orbital communication relay. One alien officer reported in perfect English. Simultaneous strikes will prevent coordinated resistance or calls for assistance from Earth. Another voice responded with clinical detachment. What about human personnel who survived the initial attacks? Standing orders are for complete elimination. No prisoners, no survivors, no evidence that human colonial expansion ever reached this star system. Sarah felt cold fury building in her chest as the true scope of the alien plan became clear. This wasn't just military action. It was genocide, designed to erase any trace of human presence and send a message to Earth that expansion beyond the solar system would not be tolerated. But they had underestimated human capabilities, just as the ambush team had underestimated what a supply coordinator could accomplish when properly motivated. Martinez status report. Almost finished downloading their operational database. But ma'am, I'm seeing something else you need to know about. They have detailed intelligence on Earth's defensive capabilities, our industrial capacity, even our political leadership. Someone has been feeding them information for months, maybe years. The betrayal was almost as shocking as the planned genocide. Someone on Earth, or within the expedition itself, had been providing detailed intelligence to hostile alien forces. The attack on 442B was just the beginning of a much larger conflict that humanity didn't even know it was fighting. Download complete, Martinez announced. I've got their entire operational database, including attack plans, personnel rosters, and intelligence assessments. But I'm also seeing countdowns that suggest the attacks begin in 18 hours. 18 hours to warn the expedition and prepare defenses against an overwhelming enemy force with superior technology and detailed intelligence about human capabilities. It should have been impossible. But Sarah had learned that humans were capable of extraordinary performance when facing impossible odds. We extract now, she decided, but first we leave them a message they'll never forget. Sarah pulled a small device from her equipment pack, a standard expedition emergency beacon, modified with explosives that Martinez had helped her prepare before the mission. Placed properly, it would destroy the facility's primary communications array and leave the alien forces temporarily unable to coordinate their planned attacks. Ma'am, that's going to bring the entire facility down on us, Jackson warned. We'll never make it back to the perimeter before they mobilize pursuit forces. Then we don't go back to the perimeter, Sarah replied. We go through them. Looked at her with understanding dawning in her expression. You're planning a fighting withdrawal straight through their main defensive positions. They're expecting stealth and evasion from human infiltrators, Sarah explained. They're not expecting 4 people to shoot their way out through the front door. Sometimes the most direct approach is the one nobody prepares for. Sarah activated the timer on the improvised explosive device and placed it against the main communications control panel. In 90 seconds, the alien facility would lose its ability to coordinate the planned genocide of every human on 442B. Extraction in 60 seconds, she announced. Jackson takes point. I've got primary fire support, Martinez, and maintain formation and handle any technical obstacles we encounter. We move fast, we shoot straight, and we all go home. The team retraced their route through the maintenance passages, but instead of returning to the concealed mountain approach, they headed for the main facility entrance. Sarah's plan was audacious to the point of insanity. Exit through the primary security checkpoint using speed and superior marksmanship to overwhelm guards who expected stealth infiltrators. They reached the main entrance just as the explosive device detonated, sending shock waves through the entire facility and triggering emergency alarms that bathed everything in pooling red light. Alien personnel rushed toward the communications center, creating exactly the chaos and confusion Sarah had counted on. Now, she commanded, kicking open the entrance door and engaging the first alien guard with precision that would have been impossible 18 months earlier. The guard went down with a single shot, his advanced weapon clattering across the floor as Sarah moved to the next target. Jackson flanked right, his rifle firing with methodical accuracy as he cleared a path through the facility's outer defenses. Martinez and maintained formation, providing covering fire and handling any technical obstacles that threatened to slow their advance. But the aliens recovered from the initial surprise faster than Sarah had anticipated. Advanced soldiers began responding to their position with coordinated fire and movement tactics that spoke of extensive training and combat experience. Energy weapons struck the ground around their position with enough force to vaporize rock and metal. "Contact left," Jackson called, engaging multiple targets moving to flank their position. "These guys are good." Sarah shifted her fire to support Jackson's position, dropping 2 alien soldiers who were attempting to establish a machine gun position that would have dominated their escape route. Her marksmanship remained precise despite the chaos around them, each shot finding its target with the deadly accuracy that had saved the Ranger convoy weeks earlier. "Martinez, can you override their automated defensive systems?" "Working on it," he replied, connecting his portable equipment to an alien control panel while bullets sparked off the walls around his position. "Their security protocols are sophisticated, but I can probably create enough confusion to give us a clear exit." Had taken position behind a barricade of alien equipment crates, her rifle speaking with sharp cracks as she engaged targets trying to close on their position. Her medical training gave her detailed knowledge of anatomy, and she was using that knowledge to maximum effect against enemies whose physiology was similar enough to humans that the same vital points applied. "Got it," Martinez announced as the facility's automated weapons systems suddenly began targeting alien personnel instead of the human infiltrators. "Their security system thinks we're authorized personnel, and everyone else is an intruder." Sarah took advantage of the confusion to advance toward their final objective, the landing pad where alien aircraft offered the fastest route off the mountain. If they could capture one of the vehicles, they might reach the expedition base in time to organize effective defenses against the planned genocide. "Aircraft secured," Jackson reported from the landing pad, "but I don't know how to fly alien technology." "I do," Martinez replied with confidence born from months of experience with alien engineering principles. "Their technology is advanced, but it follows logical patterns. Give me 30 seconds to figure out the control systems." Sarah maintained perimeter security while Martinez worked to activate the alien aircraft. Enemy forces were regrouping from the confusion of the hacked security systems, and soon they would mount a coordinated assault that 4 humans couldn't hope to survive. "Engines online," Martinez announced. "Everyone aboard were leaving." The alien aircraft lifted off with smooth acceleration that spoke of technology far beyond anything Earth had achieved. Through the cockpit windows, Sarah could see alien soldiers rushing toward the landing pad, too late to prevent their escape, but close enough to coordinate pursuit. "Can this thing outrun their other aircraft?" "We're about to find out," Martinez replied, pushing the controls forward and sending the craft racing down the mountain toward the lowland forests where the expedition base waited in complete ignorance of the approaching threat. Behind them, Sarah could see other alien aircraft launching from the facility, their sleek forms cutting through the atmosphere with ominous purpose. The escape had been successful, but pursuit was inevitable. "How long until we reach base?" 45 minutes at maximum speed," Martinez calculated. "But these pursuit craft are gaining on us. They're going to catch up before we reach friendly territory." Sarah studied the tactical display, watching as multiple hostile contacts closed on their position. Fighting a running air battle against superior technology seemed hopeless, but she had learned that humans could achieve the impossible when fighting for survival. "Can you transfer weapons control to my position?" "Done," Martinez confirmed. "But these are alien weapons systems. I don't know how effective they'll be against their own technology." Sarah activated the weapons interface, feeling the alien control systems respond to her input with surprising intuitive design. Whoever had built these craft understood the principles of combat aviation, even if their technology was centuries beyond human capabilities. The first pursuing aircraft came into range as they cleared the mountain peaks and began descending toward the forest below. Sarah acquired the target through the alien fire control system and discovered that advanced technology still obeyed the fundamental principles of combat marksmanship. Identify the target, predict its movement, and deliver accurate fire at the right moment. Her first shot struck the pursuing craft center mass, sending it tumbling out of control toward the forest canopy below. The remaining pursuers spread out and began coordinated attack runs designed to overwhelm their captured aircraft through superior numbers and firepower. But Sarah had spent 3 weeks learning that human capabilities could exceed any enemy's expectations when properly applied. Her second shot eliminated another pursuer, while her third damaged a third craft badly enough to force its withdrawal from the engagement. 2 remaining pursuit craft, Jackson reported, monitoring the tactical display from his position at the communications console. But we're approaching base air defense range. If we can stay alive for another 10 minutes, our people can provide fire support. The final approach to the expedition base became a running battle against alien aircraft that possessed superior technology, but lacked the desperate determination of humans fighting for survival. Sarah's marksmanship proved decisive, eliminating one pursuer and damaging the other badly enough to force its retreat. As they touched down at the expedition base, alarms were already sounding and personnel were rushing to defensive positions. Colonel Hammond met them at the landing pad, his expression grim as he studied the captured alien aircraft and the intelligence data Martinez had downloaded. "Please tell me you have actionable intelligence about this threat." "Sir, we have their complete operational database, including detailed attack plans set to begin in 16 hours. Every human settlement on 442B is targeted for complete elimination." Hammond studied the tactical data with the professional assessment of a career military officer who understood the implications immediately. "What are our defensive options?" Sarah looked around at the expedition personnel preparing their defenses, knowing that conventional tactics would never stop an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority. But she also knew that humans had capabilities their enemies consistently underestimated. "We don't defend, Colonel, we attack first." The supply coordinator who had worried about spreadsheets and inventory reports was gone forever, replaced by someone who understood that survival in an hostile universe required the willingness to exceed every limitation and prove that humans could accomplish the impossible when fighting for everything they held dear. The battle for humanity's future among the stars was about to begin, and Sarah would ensure that it began on human terms the true nature of the threat they faced. But failure wasn't an option, not when the alternative was watching everything they had built on this alien world disappear in fire and blood. Sarah had proven herself capable of extraordinary performance under pressure, and now it was time to find out just how extraordinary humans could become when fighting for their very survival to exceed everyone's expectations when the moment demanded it. Sarah was ready for whatever challenges 442B might present next. And somewhere in the alien forest, word would spread that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had previously believed.